interesting thing happened coming and looking at your work, and I had a prepared presentation, but I've been influenced by quite a lot of the stuff that I've seen, so I've kind of thrown that script away and I'm going to improvise a little bit, so bear with me. And that's what you can do that as an engagement fellow. And so kind of really the title of my talk was about being a real human being, and I think one of the challenges that we face is that work is not everything in our life. And so for me, having this opportunity from the Wellcome Trust, where they fund me for 2 years, possibly 3, fingers crossed, to really explore in a kind of career development which direction do you want to go to as a researcher or as a member of the public or as a practitioner. Where do you want to take this possibility of engaging the public in biomedical science? So I've got a very open brief and open remit with this fellowship from the Wellcome Trust. And so kind of what I wanted to talk to you today was ways that we might rethink our connections with one another, our planet and other species, because some of the things that I've been getting involved in, citizen science, which is this thing where you get the public involved in collecting data, and you go out and you look at things that really matter to you. So I'm quite into environmental issues, and so I've been working with communities that are doing this and have been doing it for centuries, actually collecting, looking at when seasons change, looking at what happens when different types of species of birds are not coming through, they're not appearing when we expect them to. So you're right at the cusp of where change happens, and that's where I like to situate myself in my work. So I kind of wanted to tell you a few stories. Some of them are stories that I was going to tell you anyway, but a few of them are films. So a lot of my work involves capturing and showing what I'm learning by making and sharing films with people. Part of it is I work with so many people, I often can't take them with me. So we talk about impact and collaborations and that possibility of connections and serendipity that might happen. And you want to tell stories, but sometimes those stories aren't just my stories. So I try and use film as a way to capture other people's stories that then I can share with other people. So there's a couple of films that I wanted to kind of give you a little snippets from to get you a sense of the kind of work that I've been doing and the methods that I've been using, because I can't always show that in the performance of giving a talk. So I'm going to show you one particular project that I worked on very recently around music, and I'd met a composer called Peter Lang, who's based out in Sweden, and he was really interested in thinking, how could we look at how we turn sound into form, and how could we come together, neuroscientists, storytellers, technicians, people that do stuff with computers, how could we have a few days where we look at how you turn sound into form? And research papers was not our first place to look, so I just wanted to kind of give you an insight into the practice there. So let's find it. Not that one, that one. Okay, and his project is called, he called it Mind the Gap. So let's just have a look at the beginning. If the internet permits us. Go on, internet. The internet doesn't like it. No, it doesn't like it. That's a shame. There we go. Sorry to do a bit of a remix. I'm taking it back to the beginning. Go on.
Brought people in from the US, from the UK, from the Nordic countries, brought them to Malmö for 3 days, and we put them to figure out how you bridge the gap between sound and form. So the first part was they had to collect a sound, and then they had to collect a form. And then we took a break, and people had to sort of draw what they were imagining, like the connection between the sound and form to be. And then we came back together, and they had to collect an environment and a user interface. And so what that did is that immediately threw people into the mindset of what is the connection between sound and form, and how do people experience it.
So how could we take these components, the building blocks of songs, and then reconfigure them to make something else, to innovate and make music in different ways?
I had brought this because I like the sound, different sounds. So I went to the kitchen of that one to try to find out how it worked. And then people came passing by, and I had to reveal my secret. And they immediately got very interested in the ripples and the sounds that could be created. So Peter got some dye to put in the water to make it black, and we started filming it.
And the feeling goes up and down. Sometimes we think we are this close, and then we just the gap opens again, and we're losing it. And we have started to create what we think is the sort of the logic of it, and but now we are trying to make it interesting. Sure.
I'm going to stop it there. What I tried to kind of wanted to get at from, we've got a group of people who are coming together from all over the world, and we're working on a kind of common problem, and the starting point was music. And so kind of for me, what I try and do in my practice is to not push on people that my background was as a neuroscientist and I studied the brain. Because if you think about the public and the starting point, what a starting point for talking about who we are as human beings is not going to be the brain necessarily. So I kind of would encourage you to think about that from your own research or your practice. If you're thinking about public engagement and engaging people, what is going to be that starting point that will really kind of get people in? So I try and look at really broad themes like music or gardening as starting points, so that I can have that opportunity where I could potentially get into someone's home and start having a conversation, and it's something that is in there kind of every day. So I thought it was really interesting that Christine in the Malmo project, she brought in her vibrator, and that became part of our collaborative endeavour, making something. It made us think about how we work with sound and how we could turn that into form. And she was embarrassed and shy at first, but she did, because she's an artist, she just thought, I'll bring it out there and we can do something with it. So someone this morning, I think, was it Claire? Let's have a quick look. She talked about asset-based community development. Was it Claire? Yeah. And so for me, this is one of that aspect, is that I'm trying to bring in the resources that we have collectively, that we could bring into the kind of projects that I get involved in. And so at that particular time, I was working on a project called Hooked on Music, which was all about musical memory. And so I kind of want you to imagine for a moment, if you were to think about a song that you would remember forever, and almost, until you die, what would be that one song that you keep on thinking about? And maybe, you can recall it to mind. And the point at which you start remembering that song is called the hook. And most people will recognise that hook in a tune. And so a guy at the University of Amsterdam, he was kind of looking at this and thinking about musical memory. Is looking at musical hooks a way into our memories and understanding memory better? At the same time, the Museum of Science Industry in Manchester were working with me. I'd just done quite a successful citizen science project with them that got lots of people involved in growing sunflowers and thinking about mathematical patterns. That's another story. But they wanted another citizen science project. And when the Science Festival director, Marie Canavin, she had her interview, and she was in for a job. I thought, I don't know what the next citizen science project is, but maybe it should be her job to find it and bring it to the table. So in her interview, she had to come up with what would our next citizen science project be, and she pitched something on music. And when she just talked about music and rhythm, I just thought, yes, every human being in the planet pretty much will have some kind of connection with a project on music. So yes, she should have the job. She was very good. But that was the thing for me that was like, yes, excellent. Let's think about music. And then making that connection between the guy in Amsterdam and Museum of Science Industry, being able to do a project together. So thinking about collaboration. And what was really nice about this project was there was a guy in Plymouth who had an idea, but it wasn't well formed enough for us to turn that into a big project that we could put out to the public. But he said, you know what, I know a guy in Amsterdam and a group that are working on something kind of similar that you might want to talk to them. So he kind of gave up his claim to fame and pushed it in someone else's direction. So one of the things is thinking about often who are the best people to do what you need to do. And when I talked to Ashley, the scientist in Amsterdam, one of the things that he told me was, remember, this experiment, I can only do it if I get lots of people involved. I can't do it otherwise. And this is something we'd love to do, but if we just do it with 19 students in our university, we're not going to get good enough data. And they came to us with an app that they'd made, and it was on a smartphone. So I mean, probably pretty much everyone here's got a smartphone, I'd imagine. But the challenge with it was that it was using Spotify. And Spotify is one of those, if you don't have an account with Spotify, you won't be able to play this game. So these are the kinds of challenges that you have to think about from a practitioner perspective. I want everyone to be able to play that game, so we need to have a web-based version. So it's thinking about accessibility and the possibility of us engaging as many people as possible. So anyway, with this project, it's done really well. It's been covered in The Lancet, The Times, The Guardian, and so on, lots of newspapers, and they've looked at what are the top 10 catchiest tunes, pop tunes, hit tunes since the 1940s, and have a little think, see what you think, and we'll have a look what the result is. So chat to your neighbour. What do you think would be in that top 10? Have a chat to your neighbour. So what did we reckon the top 10? Any ideas?
Bad.
What do we have over here?
Michael Jackson's
Bad. Thriller. Anything else? Spice Girls. Well, okay, all right, okay. That's good. So you had a good chat. Let's have a look what the scientists thought was the top 10 catchiest tunes since the 1940s.
The nation's official Wellcome Music Top 10 Catchiest Tunes, powered by the Museum of Science and Industry. At 10, it's Aerosmith with I Don't Wanna Miss a Thing, recognised in 2.84 seconds. The Human League coming at 9 with Don't You Want Me, picked out at 2.83 seconds. Taking 8, it's I Will Always Love You by Whitney Houston, recognised in 2.83 seconds. At 7, it's Michael Jackson with Beat It, recognised in 2.8 seconds, with its main hook at 38 seconds. 6 is Pretty Woman, the main hook at 1 minute 7 seconds is picked up by people in 2.73 seconds. SOS by ABBA takes 5, recognised in 2.73 seconds. At 4, Lady Gaga, Just Dance, at 2.66 seconds. And now the top 3. Taking the third spot, it's Eye of the Tiger by Survivor, recognised in just 2.62 seconds. In at 2, it's Lou Bega with Mambo No. 5, with its catchiest hook at 50 seconds. People recognise the one-hit wonder in just 2.48 seconds. And now, the nation's number 1, the most memorable song brought to you by Wellcome Music is The Spice Girls with Monica, recognised in just 2.29 seconds. The song's catchiest hook is at 45 seconds. Log on to www.wellcomemusic.org.uk to play the game.
Okay, so we had someone who actually guessed it, and apparently in Amsterdam the same is true.
wannabe Spice Girls. But what is it about those particular fragments in those hooks that's really important? And for me, as an engagement fellow, when I spoke to the guys in Amsterdam, they said to me, Erinma, I was like, why does this matter? And the museum science industry, who cares about this top 10 catchiest tunes? And I was really pressing them, and we were really pressing them to tell us, this is all about impact now. And they're just like, because it could have some kind of insight for research on dementia and Alzheimer's. It's like, yes, fantastic, that's where we're going with this. We need to find a way that we can connect this research project through public engagement to having an impact on people that have dementia. And if we can find really catchy hooks that could enable people to wake up in a way from the moments in which they're not able to communicate with their family and friends and improve the quality of life of people with dementia, I'm working on that project. And so the challenge for me is how we take the researcher in Amsterdam on the journey that he recognises he has to collaborate with others, and he's just about hit that moment. And part of doing your research in public and with the public, because people played a game to collect all the data, you had tunes played at you, you can play it and see what you think. But the idea was that he also has to come and talk in public, and people will say, oh, you did a press release and you talked about dementia, how are you going with that? And I can see his mind is kind of going, yes, I need to think more about that. Erinma, we must have a Skype next week. And I'm thinking, great. I'm not pushing him up front to go on that journey of we're going to make a difference to people with Alzheimer's, but we're getting to that point. He's looking at people that he could collaborate with. And the penny will drop when he realises that we have to work with people that actually care for people with Alzheimer's disease, that we work with patients, carers, and people that Alzheimer's Foundation and so on, and that actually the only things that you really can do at the moment is to try and look at how you improve quality of life, and that's going to be about dance, potentially getting people out in the open air, green spaces, and those kinds of other ways to look at how we can work with dementia, not just giving people pills and tablets, although I'm sure that will have some value too. Health, diet, all of that kind of stuff. And for me, the starting point as a researcher that started out as a neuroscientist was I did a PhD on Parkinson's disease, and I never met anybody who had Parkinson's disease, and that shouldn't be happening in British universities. We need to be able to work with people that this research really matters to, because it will shape us and it will shape you. And I'll leave it there. I did want to think, because we didn't have space for it, questions, because some really interesting questions came up that weren't answered. I think, Matt, you had a brilliant one this morning on neoliberalism and impact, and isn't this just another way to make us work really hard? And my starting point is always to start from outside of the university, which doesn't always go down too well when you think about measuring impact. But Matt, there's a great paper in that, so anyone wants to work with Matt on that, I think you should be. There's something there definitely. But if people had questions about how you work in this way, ethics is one thing to be really thinking about, and really unleashing your passions. So bring your skills, your interests, your assets, the communities that you work with back into your work, because you've only got one life.